Hey everyone, I never thought I'd be one of those people writing a long post about relationship drama, but here I am. I don't know if I'm looking for advice, validation, or just somewhere to put all of this so my head stops spinning. Maya and I have been together for almost a decade, married for 7. When we first met, she was this whirlwind of creativity, a gallery assistant with paint on her hands and a sparkle in her eyes whenever she talked about a new exhibit. I fell for her instantly. She had this way of making you feel like the only person in the room, and for a long time I believed I really was. But over the last few months, something has shifted. It started small, extra hours at the gallery because of networking, events, her phone always glued to her hand, and a new habit of staying in the car for a few seconds after pulling into the driveway. When I asked about it, she'd laugh it off, toss her hair back, and say, "You're imagining things, Daniel. Don't make everything so heavy." At first, I wanted to believe her. I even blamed myself, maybe I'd gotten too predictable, too focused on work and bills and the boring parts of life. But the more I watched, the harder it became to ignore the cracks forming under the surface. She started buying new clothes, silky scarves, fitted blazers, perfume I'd never smelled before. When I asked about the scarf, she scoffed and told me I wouldn't understand how networking actually works, as if expensive accessories were just part of the job description. Then she laughed and called me jealous, not in a cute way, but sharp, like she was daring me to push back. Lately, our conversations barely scratched the surface. I ask how her day was, and she says, "Fine, busy," then disappears into the bathroom with her phone. The way she guards it, like it's made of glass, makes me uneasy. I don't want to be that husband who snoops, but something about the way she hides the screen whenever I walk by sets off alarms in my gut. The worst part is how she makes me feel crazy for noticing. Whenever I bring up how distant she's become, she rolls her eyes and says things like, "God, Daniel, do you hear yourself? I'm allowed to have a career. Maybe you should get a hobby instead of obsessing over my schedule." I try to tell myself it's just stress, or that I'm overthinking because I've been working long hours myself. But there's a heaviness in our house now, something unsaid that clings to the walls. At night, I lie awake next to her, staring at the ceiling, wondering when our marriage stopped feeling like a partnership and started feeling like a performance. And deep down, I already know, something isn't right, and pretending otherwise isn't going to make it disappear. The night it all clicked wasn't anything special at first, just a damp, gray Thursday in early spring. I got off work early because a client meeting was cancelled, and for once I didn't tell Maya I'd be home ahead of schedule. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe pick up dinner from that Thai place she likes. When I got home, her car was still in the driveway, but the house was empty except for the faint scent of her new perfume. On the kitchen counter lay a note, "Late night at the gallery. Big shipment coming in, don't wait up." The handwriting looked rushed, the kind she used when she didn't want to explain too much. I almost believed it, until I saw her silk scarf hanging from the coat rack. The one she wore every time she left for those networking events. Something about it felt wrong, like a prop forgotten after a dress rehearsal. Curiosity gnawed at me until I couldn't sit still. I grabbed my jacket and drove downtown, rain streaking across the windshield. The closer I got to the gallery, the more my stomach tightened. I parked across the street and watched through the huge windows, their glass fogged from the humidity inside. There she was. Maya. Laughing in that way she reserves for special occasions, head tipped back, eyes sparkling. Standing with her was a man I'd never seen before, tall, navy coat, hair damp from the rain. They were too close, leaning in like there was an invisible string pulling them together. I couldn't look away. After a few minutes, she rested her hand on his arm, lingering just a little too long. My pulse hammered in my ears. I told myself it was innocent, that she probably worked with him. But deep down, I already knew. I crossed the street and pushed the door open, trying to act casual even as my heart thudded against my ribs. Maya's eyes widened when she saw me. She dropped her hand from the man's sleeve and brushed at an invisible speck on her shoulder. Daniel. I didn't expect you, she said, voice too bright, almost brittle. The man smiled politely and introduced himself as Julian, an art critic visiting from out of town. His handshake was firm, but there was something guarded in his expression, like he was playing along in a game I didn't understand. I stayed for a few awkward minutes while they pretended to talk shop. Maya's laughter sounded forced now, the way it does when she's trying to cover a lie. On the way home, I couldn't stop replaying the scene. Their closeness, the way she startled, the faint flush in her cheeks. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, but the knot in my gut told a different story. I'd just seen the tip of something much bigger, and I wasn't ready for what was hidden underneath. I don't think I've ever driven home in such a fog. The rain kept smearing the wipers, and my thoughts were just as messy, looping between anger, confusion, and a weird numbness. Maya texted me once while I was on the road, heading home soon. Don't wait up if you're tired. The message looked harmless, but after what I'd just seen, it felt like a landmine hidden under polite words. When I got home, I sat in the driveway for a while, watching the lights in our house. Part of me wanted to burst in and demand an explanation, but another part wanted proof, something solid that couldn't be brushed away with one of her practiced smiles. Inside, everything looked normal. Too normal. Her shoes were neatly by the door, a candle flickered on the coffee table, and soft jazz hummed from the speaker. The kind of cozy scene you'd expect from a happy couple, except my skin prickled with unease. While I was pacing the living room, my eyes landed on her sketchbook lying half-hidden beneath a throw pillow. Maya was fiercely protective of that thing, always tucking it away in drawers or sliding it into her tote. I hesitated, then picked it up, telling myself I just needed to know if I was losing my mind. The first few pages were harmless, studies of flowers, rough outlines of gallery layouts. But as I flipped deeper, the tone shifted. There were fragments of letters woven between charcoal drawings, quick scribbles, half-finished sentences. Julian, your words still burn on my skin. Tonight, under the skylight. No one makes me feel alive like you do. I felt the air leave my lungs. The room blurred for a second, and I had to sit down. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped the book. A door clicked shut upstairs, the shower. She was home. Panic rushed through me. I shoved the sketchbook back under the pillow just as I heard her footsteps on the landing. Maya walked in wrapped in steam and a towel, hair damp and curling at the ends. She smiled like nothing in the world was wrong. You're still up. You should get some sleep, she said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. I forced a smile, heart hammering so hard I thought she'd hear it. She smelled like her new perfume, sharp and sweet all at once. She padded off to the bedroom, humming softly. That night, I lay beside her while she scrolled through her phone, face aglow in the dark. I couldn't see the screen, but I didn't need to. My mind replayed those words in her sketchbook, over and over, like an echo I couldn't shut off. I barely slept. Every creak of the house felt loaded, every brush of her hand against mine a reminder of the distance that had grown between us. By morning, I knew one thing for sure, pretending not to know wasn't an option anymore. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, but it didn't warm anything inside me. Maya was already dressed, leaning against the kitchen counter with her phone in one hand and a mug of coffee in the other. She looked calm, too calm, scrolling like she had no idea the ground beneath us had shifted overnight. I stood there for a few seconds, just watching her. My heart felt like it was trying to claw its way out of my chest. Finally, I said, "We need to talk." She glanced up, eyebrows raised. "About what?" "I'm late already, Daniel." Her tone had that familiar edge, the one she used whenever I interrupted her flow. I set my own coffee down, hands steady only because I forced them to be. "About you and Julian. About the notes in your sketchbook." For a moment, her face was blank, then the mask slid back on. She laughed, sharp and brittle. You went through my sketchbook. That's, wow, really? Talk about violating my privacy. I swallowed hard. Don't twist this, Maya. Those weren't doodles. I saw what you wrote. She put her cup down a little too loudly. You don't get it. Those were conceptual exercises. Writers and artists do it all the time, create characters, invent stories. You think every word in there is about me? She shook her head, letting out a sigh heavy with mock pity. God, Daniel, you're so insecure. Insecure. I repeated, my voice louder than I meant. I watched you last night, laughing with him, touching his arm like you couldn't help yourself. Don't tell me I imagined that. Her eyes narrowed. I told you, he's an art critic. I was networking. I'm trying to build a reputation, and you're accusing me of, what? Having some torrid affair in the gallery bathroom? I wanted to believe her, to let her spin one more story I could cling to. But I remembered the sentence etched into the paper, your words still burn on my skin. There wasn't a universe where that was just creative writing. Maya, please, I said quietly. Just tell me the truth. Are you seeing him? She stared at me, lips pressed together. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw guilt flash across her face, but then she straightened her shoulders. You're being ridiculous, she said finally. If this is what marriage with you is going to be, you stalking me, reading into everything, maybe you should get some help. And just like that, she grabbed her bag and breezed out the door, leaving the smell of her perfume and a silence so heavy it felt like the walls might split. I stood alone in the kitchen, coffee cooling on the counter, wondering if I'd just watched my marriage crack wide open, or if it had already been broken for a long time, and I'd only now seen the fracture lines. When the door slammed behind her, it felt like all the air left the house. I stood there for a long time, staring at the place where she'd been. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was jagged, like standing too close to a live wire. I wandered back to the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, head in my hands. All the little things I'd ignored, the late nights, the phone turned face down, the new perfume, lined up in my mind like clues I'd refused to read. The more I thought about it, the heavier it became, pressing against my ribs until I couldn't breathe. Anger came next, sudden and sharp. How could she look me in the eye and make me feel crazy? How could she lie so easily, accuse me of paranoia, when she'd written those words with her own hand? I grabbed the throw pillow hiding her sketchbook and nearly ripped it apart just to get at the pages again. But I stopped myself. I didn't need to see the proof twice, it was already burned into my memory. Then came the sadness, the kind that seeps into your bones. I thought about the life we'd built, the dinners we cooked together, the lazy Sunday mornings, the way she used to press her cold feet against mine in bed just to make me yelp. Were all those moments real, or just a performance to keep me from noticing who she really was? I barely moved the rest of the day. At one point, my phone buzzed, a text from her, running errands after work. Don't wait up. No heart emoji, no warmth, just a casual line like we hadn't just had our first real fight about her loyalty. By evening, exhaustion set in, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the glow of the street lamp leaking through the blinds. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in the gallery, startled, guilty, then slipping back into that bright, brittle smile. I realized something then, even if she confessed, even if she promised to change, something inside me had already shifted. Trust isn't just an idea, it's a feeling, and mine was gone. The floor we'd been standing on had given way, and I didn't know if there was any solid ground left for us to stand on together. The morning after our fight, Maya acted like nothing had happened. She waltzed into the kitchen in a fitted dress I'd never seen before, her hair perfectly styled, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She poured herself coffee and said, "You look tired, Daniel. Maybe try yoga or something, you're wound way too tight." I just stared at her. We're really going to pretend yesterday didn't happen? She raised an eyebrow, sipping her drink. What exactly do you want me to say? That I have to stop talking to every man because you're insecure? That's not healthy, babe. I hated how casually she said babe, like we hadn't just torn holes in each other. I'm not talking about every man, I said quietly. I'm talking about Julian. About the things you wrote. Her smile faltered for a split second, so quick I almost missed it, then she shrugged. You clearly don't understand how creative minds work. I write to process feelings, to explore characters. That doesn't mean anything's actually happening. She leaned against the counter, almost smug. You should be proud I'm brave enough to put my emotions on paper. The words felt rehearsed. I couldn't shake the image of her hand on Julian's sleeve, or the way she flushed when she saw me at the gallery. So why didn't you tell me you were meeting him outside work? I asked. That earned me a scoff. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd flip out exactly like this. God, Daniel, you make everything about yourself. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it so fast it was like instinct, shielding the screen with her palm. It's just work, she said, turning away, but I caught the faint smile spreading across her face as she typed. I felt something twist inside me. A mix of rage and helplessness, like trying to hold water in my hands. If it's work, let me see. She froze for a heartbeat, then laughed. I'm not showing you my texts. What's next, you going to install spyware on my phone? I'm allowed to have private conversations. That was when it hit me, she wasn't just hiding something, she was enjoying the power it gave her. Every deflection, every sharp little jab was calculated to make me question myself while she slipped further out of reach. Before she left for the day, she tossed a breezy, love you, over her shoulder, like we hadn't just been circling a minefield. I stood in the doorway, watching her walk to her car, scarf fluttering in the breeze. I'd thought finding those words in her sketchbook was the worst of it, but now I realized that was only the first crack. The real damage was how easily she could look me in the eye and lie, stacking story after story until I couldn't tell which version of her was real. And somewhere beneath all that anger, a cold thought settled in my gut: if she was this good at lying, I probably didn't know half of what she was hiding. That night, I couldn't sit still. Every sound in the house set my nerves off, the heater clicking, the fridge humming. I kept thinking about the way she'd grabbed her phone, the smug smile she couldn't quite hide. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed and went downstairs. Her handbag was draped over the chair by the door, carelessly left there like bait. I hesitated for a long time before opening it, my hands slick with sweat. Inside were the usual things: lipstick, receipts, a tiny notebook. One receipt caught my eye, a charge from a hotel across town, dated 2 nights ago, just after one of her so-called networking events. My stomach turned. I stared at the paper until the numbers blurred. I crept back upstairs, unsure if I wanted more evidence or if I'd already found enough to break me. Maya was asleep, face turned toward the window, breathing slow and even. I slid under the covers, the receipt burning a hole in my pocket. In the morning, she was all sunshine and soft humming, like a woman without a single secret. She packed a tote bag with sketchbooks and her laptop, moving around the kitchen in perfect rhythm. When she noticed me watching, she smirked. Don't look so grim, Daniel. It's a beautiful day. I put the receipt on the table. Care to explain this? She glanced at it and actually laughed. Oh my God, are you serious? That was for a client meeting. The gallery booked the space for us to go over an installation plan. Do you think I'm sneaking off to a hotel for fun? Were you alone? I asked. Her eyes flicked away, just for a heartbeat, before she rolled them. Julian was there. And 2 interns. But clearly you've made up your mind that I'm some kind of villain. The way she said villain made me feel small, like I was a child being scolded for believing in monsters. She snatched the receipt off the table and stuffed it into her bag. Stop digging, Daniel, she said as she grabbed her keys. You're making us miserable." Then she kissed my cheek lightly, like the whole conversation had been a minor inconvenience, and swept out the door. I stood there long after she left, staring at the space she'd vacated. I felt like I was tugging at a loose thread on a sweater, only to realize the whole thing might unravel in my hands. And part of me, the tired, angry part, wondered if maybe it should. After she left that morning, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my cold coffee. The receipt was gone, tucked neatly into her bag like it had never existed. It felt symbolic. Every time I reached for the truth, she snatched it away, smiling as if I was the one losing touch with reality. By noon, I couldn't take the waiting anymore. I called in sick to work, grabbed my jacket, and drove to the hotel listed on the receipt. The lobby smelled faintly of lilies and furniture polish. I walked to the front desk and, after fumbling through a clumsy explanation about needing confirmation for an invoice, managed to get a look at the reservation. My chest tightened when I saw her name, and Julian's, side by side, booked for 2 evenings, not 1. The desk clerk smiled politely, oblivious to the way my world tilted. I thanked him and left, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my keys. That evening, I waited for her on the porch. When Maya arrived, she looked radiant, hair pinned up, lips painted a perfect crimson. She stepped out of the car and froze when she saw me standing there. "We need to talk," I said. She sighed dramatically, as if I'd ruined her evening. "Again with this? Daniel, you're obsessed." I held up the information I'd written down from the hotel. 2 nights. With Julian. "Are you really going to tell me this is about an installation?" For a moment, her face cracked, a flicker of guilt or maybe irritation, then she crossed her arms. "You're unbelievable." I stayed because the meeting ran late and the weather was awful. Julian had a separate room. "You think I'd risk my career for some cheap fling?" She tossed her bag onto the bench and pushed past me toward the door. "If you don't trust me, maybe you're the problem, not me." I followed her inside, my voice raw. "Stop lying, Maya. I've seen the way you look at him. I read what you wrote." She spun around, eyes flashing. "And you read my private work. You don't respect me, Daniel. No wonder I don't tell you everything." Her words hit like a slap, not because they were true, but because they were so expertly designed to turn blame back on me. For the first time since this started, I felt something inside me harden. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't jealous without reason. I was a man who'd been lied to over and over while the person he loved watched him crumble and called it insecurity. I didn't yell. I just looked at her and said quietly, "I don't know who you are anymore." She didn't answer. She just turned, grabbed a bottle of wine from the counter, and disappeared into the bedroom, shutting the door with a click that sounded final. I sat alone in the living room, the shadows stretching long as night fell, realizing the person I'd built my life around had become a stranger, and maybe she always had been. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the hotel registry, the sketchbook, the way her face hardened when I caught her lies. At some point, around dawn, I sat up and knew I couldn't keep living in this suspended state between truth and her stories. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, hair messy, clutching a half-empty mug of coffee, I was waiting at the table with a small overnight bag packed. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to me, sharp and wary. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked. "It means I'm done begging for honesty," I said. My voice surprised me, steady, calm. "I've tried to give you a chance to tell the truth, to respect what we built. But you keep lying, and I can't unsee everything I've seen." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please. You're acting like some tragic hero. This is just a rough patch." "A rough patch doesn't involve secret hotel rooms, Maya." I pushed a folded paper toward her, a printout from the hotel registry, the copy of the receipt. "I've booked a room for myself tonight. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer." Her expression wavered then, something close to fear sliding behind her irritation. For a second I thought she might finally confess, but instead she sneered. "Fine. Run away if you want. You were never strong enough for me anyway." I didn't answer. I slung the bag over my shoulder, walked to the door, and paused long enough to take one last look at the home we'd filled with memories, dinners, laughter, plans for a future that would never happen. Then I stepped outside, closing the door on her voice calling my name, softer now, almost pleading. Driving away, I felt grief rising like a tide, but underneath it was something steadier, relief. I couldn't fix someone who chose deception over love, but I could save myself from the slow erosion of staying. For the first time in weeks, the road ahead looked clear, even if I didn't yet know where it would lead. I didn't expect the quiet that followed. No dramatic phone calls, no tears spilling over voicemail, just silence from Maya after I left. A week later, she sent one flat text, "I'll pack my things this weekend." That was it. 7 years of marriage, reduced to one sentence. I spent those first few nights at a small motel on the edge of town, staring at the ceiling and replaying everything. There was grief, yes, but also a strange lightness, like I'd been carrying stones in my chest and finally set them down. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd given up trying to believe her lies until I was free of them. Looking back, I see how slowly the ground shifted, the eye rolls when I asked questions, the way she turned every doubt into an accusation about my jealousy, the secrecy hidden behind jokes. It wasn't just the affair that broke us, it was the steady drip of dishonesty that hollowed out what we had. If anyone reading this has that knot in your stomach, the one whispering that something isn't right, listen to it. You're not paranoid for noticing patterns. You're not overreacting when you ask for respect. I won't pretend I've figured everything out. Divorce papers aren't a magic cure for heartbreak. But I've learned that love without trust isn't love at all, it's a slow bleed. And no amount of history is worth bleeding yourself dry. So that's where I'm at, building a new life, piece by piece. If you're standing at the edge of a truth you're afraid to face, know this, the pain of walking away is real, but so is the peace waiting on the other side. Thanks for reading, and for giving me a space to untangle this mess. If anyone has been through something similar, I'd appreciate hearing how you found your footing again.